you just very quickly tell us what actually induced you to come up with the idea? Why did you feel the need to explain to your clients that there is this concept of the urban room? Because I think for all these reasons I already mentioned, there's a certain lack in terms of awareness of what we can do with public spaces. Maybe we're not exploiting opportunities.
I think we're very close to a critical moment in time where we know that we are aware of other cultures through our capacity to move. And movement creates an economy by itself, either tourism or business. But you tend to go to places where you don't necessarily belong to start from, and realize that the spaces that we take for granted in Europe in terms of public realm, have been produced basically by either popes, statements of kings, queens. Right? So the three examples of the neoclassical age, with St. Peter's of Rome, Louvre, and Buckingham, are generated the public realm. I mean, this is a representation of the facade, but you have parks, you have squares, you have avenues, and that was to the image of the monarch or the power. So when I look at that, and in parallel, the architect Boulay, that was in 18th century, century of lights, where Boulay was in constant fights with the engineers and the academicians. So architects were doing facades, engineers were doing the infrastructure and the streets and the control of the territory in Paris. He said, I'm going to bring the city into the building, so screw the engineers. And I'm going to create this space where you go just to stay. And that was the century of the Enlightenment, right? So encyclopedia and knowledge. So it was a library. And it's the first time also you see a representation of a building with people. Usually it was just drawings, facades. So all of a sudden people took, I mean, it's out of scale maybe. Some people would think, oh, it's scary. But actually, you see people and they have a scale. So what we took of Boulay in the 20th century, when we reconstructed Europe and the world, was the same grand spaces for places to move, for places not to stay. And the production of the 20th century, with our genius of engineering, are places to move, so mobility. So stations, shopping malls, airports. And then do you realize how much you like the people you run into in those places? Not. So there's two things that are happening. You hate the people in your way, and you're only there because you have money. So what happens to those? The rest, I mean, what happens to those time where you could be without having to consume or to move? Can you reinvent the notion of staying? Now, I'm going to talk just about a project because that was where the conversation happened in Lisbon when I had this beautiful project where you see on this diagram that started from a competition where we were giving 5 blocks of 4, 1, 2, 3, 5. 5 architects, 5 blocks, a square. And I said, well, I want all or nothing, so I'm going to take all the voids and put it in as a central square. And there was no other 4 architects, got the whole thing. But then the problem became what to do with that square. This is problematic, so I'm going to skip that. And we did this project for a private client, and I created a problem that could not be solved. So I had this friend, Luis Serpa, very good collector and curator in Lisbon. He said, it's hopeless what you're doing because, I said, bring artists, bring your. He said, no, architects, artists cannot work. They have too much ego. And I was trying to demonstrate that my methodology was already to dismiss and to remove the ego part, right? He said, no. And he said, the only way is to call Bob Wilson because he wants to do permanent things. And he's the genius of creating settings. And he said, call Bob. He said, yes, I want to do it. I want to put Lisbon on the map, a world map. He did. Okay, we did. I said, okay. He said, carte blanche. Okay. I said, great, I'm going to work with Bob Wilson. I love what he does. No, you give him everything. So we did present something to the client, the idea, but he said, no, I like a statue in the square, and I want Degas. It's not a Degas, but it's like... But see, this is like, again, where the brain and the eye, the object out there, is not perceived. And my client, very educated client, speaking 5 languages, could not see art other than statue and fountains. So that was a problem. So it's an open question that's not been answered, because you know what's happening in Lisbon. The project got planning but never was economically viable, because what you know, and we stopped there.